Welcome to the Autism Diagnosis to Confident Mom podcast with Kira from Kira Brown Coaching. I'm a mom of neurospicy kids and a life coach. I'm here to share real tips and support to help you feel confident as a parent. Welcome back to Autism Diagnosis to Confident Mom podcast. If you're new here, welcome. We're glad to have you. Today, we're going to talk all about IEPs. What is an IEP? Who needs one? How do we get one? What do we do if we don't agree with what the school has said about the IEP? All of it. So listen to the end because I'm going to tell you how to deal with it when you disagree with the school's recommendations. Let's do this. School is starting. That means you might want to start thinking about an IEP for your autistic or ADHD kiddo. But you might be saying, what is an IEP? I don't even know what it is. What does it do? Why do I need one? We're going to talk all about it today. Just on a beginner's level. So an IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. It is a customized plan for your child's education. You have to qualify for one through a disability. Autism is one of the ones that qualifies for it. And you want to start this process as soon as possible. You could even, I know school's just getting ready to start in a lot of areas. Even if the school year hasn't started, you could still email your principal and just let them know, hey, I have an autistic student that's coming in. I would like to formally request an IEP meeting and or a 504 meeting. And we'll talk about the difference between those two in a minute. But so after you do that, your school has, I want to say it's 30 days, it might be 60 days to get a hold of you and schedule a meeting. A lot of them won't start until school starts. But if you send one sooner than later, then you're earlier on the list. But you could do it anytime throughout the year. You can request as many of these meetings as you want. If you feel like things have changed and you need to change an IEP, if you feel like for whatever reason, you can request them anytime and they have to give you one. I do believe it's within 30 days. I should have verified that. And it might change from state to state. But and what will happen is they will schedule with you an in-person meeting. My school usually does them right after school, so I find a babysitter for my children and I go in. Usually your teacher will be there, your child's teacher, a special ed teacher, a school psychologist, or whoever's doing evaluations. I've had a lot of times the principal is there or the school counselor is there. You obviously are there, and then you can invite anybody you want to come. I know for me it's a little intimidating because it's me and then this whole room of people who know everybody, and I kind of feel like it's me versus them. And so in the past, I've invited my child's counselor, like therapist that we're hiring on the side to show up, or I've had my husband come with me. And some of those people have Zoomed in. Like it doesn't have to be in person. Let's say they're not able to make it in person, but they can Zoom in. You can accommodate for that, request for that. So bring whoever you want to bring, who you think will help you. You want to come into this meeting with the mindset of we're all here to help my child. I find that mindset has helped me get farther than it's me versus them. I've tried it both ways. So if we're all here to help my child, we're all here to figure out what's best for them, then that tends to go a lot easier. And we're going to come up, so in the first meeting, we're going to talk about why we think this child needs evaluated, how they're doing in the classroom, what kinds of things we're noticing. If you have a medical diagnosis, I would bring that. If you have proof on how their grades are not doing as well, I would bring that. Whatever information you have to present on why you think your child needs evaluated. And then they will schedule an evaluation. from there. And then after the evaluation, you'll come back into a meeting and they'll tell you what they found. Depending on how that goes, depends on what happens next. So in the case of my son, he was functioning really well at school. And so even though he had a medical diagnosis of autism, he did not qualify for an IEP. That is because an IEP changes what their curriculum on what they're learning at school. So a lot of children that end up on an IEP are quote unquote behind the average student and need help learning, need to learn in a different manner. There's also what you call a 504 if they don't qualify for an IEP, if they're doing okay academically, that can accommodate them in different ways. Those things might be like sensory breaks or accommodations like extra time on tests, or they're allowed to get up and leave the room, or they're allowed fidgets, or they're allowed a rubber band on the bottom of their desk so their feet can bounce, so they can get their wiggles out, a wobbly chair, different things. And so you might have one or the other depending on your child's needs. I know my autistic and my ADHD kiddo are both highly intelligent. They're at the top of their class, so they don't qualify for an IEP per se, but we have accommodations through a 504 for one of them. The other one doesn't have any yet. And I've noticed, and this has just been my personal experience, my kiddos don't qualify for IEP or 504 as kindergartners, first graders, because the maturity level of all of the children is lower. And so the behaviors that my children have are a little more socially acceptable. But as my children have grown into second, third, fourth grade, that gap grows bigger. The other children are able to sit longer, they're able to focus longer. And then my child, for example, with ADHD, she's the older of the two, that gap has grown. And so that's when we've applied a 504. Executive functioning skills are going to come into play here. You might have accommodations for some of those. Maybe you have a teacher help them organize. Maybe you have them in social skills groups, that kinds of things. But anyways, I kind of got off the beaten path here. But so after the evaluation, you'll come back, you'll meet again, they'll give you your findings. If they think they need an IEP, then you'll hash it out. You'll come up with a customized plan. And a lot of times you'll get in there and they'll be like, what is it that you're wanting, Mom? And my first time going in, I was like, I don't even know what the options are. I don't know what to request. So I would do some homework. I would ask some questions. I would ask other kiddos what accommodations, other parents what their accommodations are. You can ask on Facebook groups. You can ask other moms. You can ask, the special ed teachers in your area. You can ask all sorts of people. You can look at the things that you're doing at home for them to help them thrive. Look around and come up with ideas of what you want. But this is a customized plan for your child. So come with ideas of what you might want. Be open to other ideas. If they tell you no to an idea, then say, how else might we accomplish XYZ? How else might we accomplish getting his extra wiggles out if you won't allow him to have a sensory break? That was one that we were rejected. They didn't qualify for the OT room, the sensory break. So my child is allowed to get up and go walk to the bathroom or go get a drink in the hallway anytime she pleases. Anytime she feels like she needs a break, she's allowed to get up and go and then come back. She obviously has to be respectful in the hallways, but she's allowed to go. That's her accommodation. So there's some workarounds, some different ideas, right? I had a kiddo that had a hard time on the bus. We have an hour-long bus ride. The school put together backpacks of things for him to do that were different, that weren't a tablet. They wanted me to send a tablet, and I said, that's not an option. I'm not sending a tablet because I know my child, right? A tablet, he's going to get off of that and he's going to be more dysregulated. He might be quiet on the bus, but it's not a win-win for both of us. So they came up with activities for him to do on the bus. They sat with him every day after preschool. So work it out. Come up with different ideas, different solutions. They had some excellent ideas. And do you know who I found had the best ideas, at least at my school? The school counselor. So if they're not invited to the meeting, you might ask them to be invited. You might need some social skills. You might need, there's all sorts of things. Think like the sky is the limit. They might need a one-on-one aid. They might need to be outside of the classroom rather than in a large classroom. They might need accommodations like PE is too loud, so they need one-on-one PE or a smaller PE class so that they can still get the physical education, still do the not extracurriculars, but the specials, we call them specials in Wyoming. So they still get to do those activities, but it's in a different manner. There are hundreds of thousands of ways to reach these things. And sometimes we have to think outside of the box, but don't be afraid to think outside of the box. Remember, we're all trying to find the best solution for your child to learn and thrive at school. So, what you will discuss in an IEP meeting when you're coming up with your IEP is, where is your child at now? You're going to come up with some measurable goals. What are we trying to work on? And you have to have a way to measure those. So think about that when you're thinking about the things you want for your child at school. You're going to come up with services and supports, which I've talked about some of these, but some of these things are like speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, social skills groups, behavior accommodations, sensory breaks, different classes, placement. Are they in the regular classroom or are they in a special ed classroom that's smaller, that's more accommodated to their thing, their specialties? Do include their strengths and things that motivate them. Include those. Make their school experience great. Have things that they're good at, that they're working on, as well as other things that they're working on. There's two different categories, and they might talk about this. You have accommodations and modifications, and I'm just going to give you this so that you understand definitions. An accommodation adjusts how they learn. Do they have extra time on a test? Are they allowed to get up and wiggle? Are they, I don't know, the sky's the limit, okay? Accommodations, how they learn. That's what we're adjusting, how they learn. A modification is what they learn. And an IEP, at least in my state, an IEP is what they learn. It changes what they learn. Their curriculum is going to be different in some way. Maybe their reading skills aren't as high, so they're reading, so you adjust that. Or maybe they struggle with math or whatever. You're going to adjust what they learn for their skill set. Whereas in accommodations, which my school tends to do in 504s in Wyoming, is how they learn. That's going to be behavioral accommodations. If they have a meltdown, what do we do? If they need a break, what do we do? Those kinds of things. So you're going to talk about all of those things in these meetings. And we're going to, once we get the ball rolling and you have an IEP or a 504, you're going to review it once a year. The school will get a hold of you and be like, it's been a year, we need to review this. And you come in and you review it. Every 3 years, you'll have a reevaluation to make sure they still qualify for those IEPs or 504s. If you get done with a meeting and you disagree, let's say they said that your child doesn't qualify, but you feel like they are not reading as well as they should, or they need a break in school, or whatever, you disagree for whatever reason, you can request a reevaluation. A lot of states, if not all, I'm not 100% sure if all do, but a lot of states have state advocates that will help you walk through this process. Every time you go into an IEP meeting, they are supposed to offer you paperwork that explains the process. And in that process is what you do if you do not agree. You can get mediation. You can get lawyers involved. You can go as far as you need to go. They are required by law to help your student if they qualify. So don't be afraid to ask for another evaluation. You can request a private evaluation if you don't like their evaluation. You'll have to pay for the private one, but you can request that. Have them retested in another setting. But my suggestion to you is to keep proof of everything. If you request something, send it in an email. Don't make a phone call. There's no record that happened. Send an email. You have a copy, they have a copy. Send a follow-up email. Thank you for the meeting. This is what I understand happened. Let me know if you think differently. Now you have a written, time-stamped proof of what happened. Keep their report cards, keep their state testing scores, keep anything that is going to help you prove that they need help. I used to throw all those things away because I was like, he's a straight A student. But when the state testing all of a sudden went from, hey, we have an A on a report card, but we are in needs help category with reading, when I brought that in and brought that up, that's when we qualified for a 504. She could wiggle. She could get up and have a break. She could have quiet testing spaces, have longer on testing, those sorts of things. So don't be afraid to ask for them to do it again. It's just fine. And at any point in the year, you feel like something has changed, you need a change, you realize, hey, they're doing really well at home when they get to chew gum, that's giving them sensory input, you write an email in and you say, hey, can we schedule another IEP? I have something I want to add to it. Then you do the whole process and you add it to it and then you move on. And that meeting might be 5 minutes long. You're just like, hey, I want to add this accommodation. They say, okay, they'll talk about it in the room. Teacher, what are you seeing? Whatever. And then they'll be like, okay, that sounds reasonable to me. Let's add it. Everybody sign the paper and we're done. And they should send you with a copy of the IEP. And I would follow up and make sure the IEP is being followed. A lot of schools are really good about following it, but sometimes they aren't. And so I would just assume that you need to ask your child, hey, did you get the rubber band on the bottom of your desk? Are you allowed to go get a drink anytime you want? Are you going to take sensory breaks? Are you getting one-on-one reading help with whatever teacher? Don't be afraid to ask. There's nothing wrong with asking and making sure that it's being followed through with. And if you have any questions or concerns, just reach out to your school in writing and they'll get back to you. So if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. But you can do this. It's not as scary as it seems. It seems scary, and I would highly recommend taking a spouse or a friend with you, somebody who can be level-headed and not like, you don't want somebody who's gonna start screaming and yelling and being like, you guys aren't being fair and whatever. You want somebody who can be level-headed and help you, but don't be afraid to bring somebody so you're not alone, because sometimes it does feel intimidating. There's one of you and there's 5 or 6 of them. It feels like an unfair, but you can equal the playing field. Bring whoever. You are allowed to invite whoever. You just have to let them know that they're coming. So reach out. You might be told your child doesn't qualify for an IEP, or they're doing well enough in school they don't need a 504. And sometimes that's okay too. My autistic kiddo right now doesn't have an IEP or a 504, but we went through the process, and guess what? Now it is verified that he has autism. So if he ever goes to the office for screaming and yelling and throwing things, aka having a meltdown, he's not going to get suspension, right? They're going to be like, oh, yes, that's right. This child has autism. Mom was worried this might happen. Now let's reevaluate. Maybe he needs some accommodations now. They're going to handle the situation different because they know. If they don't know that said child is autistic or has ADHD or whatever disability, they can't help the child where they're at. So, you can do this, mama. I know you can. Go advocate for your kiddo. Get them the help they need. Learn what you need to learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for accommodations. But know what you want, but also don't be afraid to ask them what they would recommend, what has worked in their situations. But just know if they come out of there doing great at school and they're not doing great at home, it's not your parenting. It's not your parenting. There's a different schedule. There's a different routine. They might have visual schedules. They have a lot of things already built in that I thought I needed to ask for, like visual routines and sticking to a schedule and all those kinds of things that they automatically put in because kids thrive in that environment that don't always happen at home. I don't know about you, but we try to have a bedtime routine, but it doesn't stay the same every single night. There's like variables, right? This sibling has this we have to go to now. It's later. Everything has changed. So get the help if they need it. Let your school know what they're dealing with. And just know you're not a bad parent, regardless of what is said in that meeting. You are the expert on your child. You are the one that has spent 10,000 plus hours with that child. So go with your gut and don't let them make you feel defeated. You've got this, mama. You're doing better than you think. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for listening to Autism Diagnosis to Confident Mom. If this episode helped you feel a little more seen or supported, please take a moment to like, follow, or subscribe to the podcast. And if you know another parent who needs to hear this, share it with them too. We're all in this together. You're doing better than you think, Mama. You've got this.